I'm Damien Quintard. I'm the co-founder of Miraval Studios. And I first off started as a mechanical engineer and then got into the industry as a classical record engineer, then a Tonmeister because I used to work with orchestras and also record symphonies, et cetera, et cetera. And then more and more, I got into doing many different things with sound, whether it's for an exhibition, whether it's for pop, rock, funk, you name it. My goal was to understand how to produce artists and how to produce them very differently sometimes, and always how to create a cocoon around the artist and make sure that they can output something beautiful or something humane, something emotional. Back in 1977, Jacques Lussier, who was a very famous French pianist, created Studio Miraval before it became Miraval Studios. So for the next 25 years, they recorded amazing acts. You know, Pink Floyd did parts of The Wall here. Sade recorded lots of her records here. We've got AC/DC also that came along, and George Michael recorded and wrote and composed Careless Whisper here, amongst many other songs. So obviously it's kind of a holy grail for engineers and for musicians. And so these were the sacred and the beautiful origins of what was called Studio Miraval. And then now for the new era, you have the new version, which is called Miraval Studios. I was working on many different types of records a few years ago, and I was also very much linked to the world of modern art. So we did the reopening of the MoMA with Philippe Arena and Arca. And it's kind of through this realm of modern art that Brad got in touch with the many different things that I was working on. And out of nowhere, I got a call saying that he was coming to see me in Paris to discuss with me of a very secret project. And obviously it was definitely a surprise. A big part of me didn't think it was real either. And then he told me that he had this amazing place called Miraval, and that part of his chateau, part of his domain, was this big bâtisse that hosted, back in the days, the Studio Miraval. As soon as I got in the studio, it was very low ceiling. You had a very 70s vibe to the place. And I'm a lover of these vibes. I'm a lover of the origins of sound and the first records that were done. But it was a very dark place. You know, there wasn't any openings to the outside. And I couldn't rebuild the studio for the future if it was going to be dark. And this is when I took this decision with Brad to not renovate, but rebuild. But always while preserving the soul of the place. So this is how this futuristic yet tribute design was created. And that's why we tried really to push for the future while honoring for the past. Miraval is kind of a very special place because when artists come around here, they usually come for a very long, prolonged period of time. They want to make sure they immerse themselves into what Miraval means and also into the nature of the domain. So it is a residential studio for sure. We've got full facilities for video productions. We have painters coming around, amazing directors too. It is definitely a cocoon. It is a sanctuary where we try to make sure that anything that goes against creation is removed from the equation. And when artists are here, they can just focus on creating. We want to make sure that we have such a diversity in the different colors that we can propose to the artists that they can really have fun and feel free when they expand their creativity here. So obviously, having some Neves were just a no-brainer. It's something that all of the artists want because it's the standard. It's kind of a way to appreciate a level of quality and also a level of certainty, right? Because when we talk about gear, to be completely honest, all of the best recording studios in the world have the best gear. They all have Neves, they all have all the major brands. And also, we were, working recently on just the mini version of the 88, the 88M. And it just goes to show that you can just go into your room with, in a way, a not too expensive piece of equipment and also a $50 microphone, and you can output an amazing record like Billie Eilish did. She won a gazillion Grammys and she did all of that in her room, right? So why would you come to a studio when you can do that from your room? And this is when the idea of inspiration comes along, the idea of creating something different, the idea of being part of a legacy also comes along. And when we're talking about building a place that can enable artists to be part of something bigger, something that can't really be measured, I think we need to be able to provide the artists with the best gear possible so that they can make sure there is nothing coming in between their inspiration and printing that on whether it's tape machine or analog or digital. And I think this, in part, is what, Neve proposes. For ages, it has enabled artists to make sure that I have an idea, I want to record it, and I know it's going to sound good. When I was much, much younger, like 15 years ago, something like that, maybe even more, I didn't really have much money, but I still wanted to make sure that I could get, in a way, reference sound for the little projects I had on my own. So with my best buddy at the time, we bought the very first version of the 1073 LB for the lunchbox. And I really had fun with it because it was a way for me to kind of touch the Neve sound, touch the frequencies that I wanted to get out of my productions, even when I was a young one. And it was a first introduction to what I could potentially do as a producer and also as an engineer. So when we're doing records, we have so many different things that we can record here, right? It's a studio that's made for classical music or pop or rap or rock or funk, you name it. We can do it here with the acoustics, with the gear that we have and the experience also. And there's always something fun going on when it comes to preamps and when it comes to how we actually print it straight, right? And I'll just take the example of the different Neves that we have here. We've got the 1073, we've got the 1084, and we've also got the 1081. And funnily enough, they all vary in terms of complexity, especially for the EQ part. And it really depends on what we're producing at this specific moment that will define which preamp we're going to be using. So with the 1073s, it's like the straightforward machine. You plug it in there. You don't even necessarily have to activate the EQ. It sounds like it's supposed to sound, right? And if you want to go super fast and do a lightning fast EQ round, you go ahead, you've got 4 knobs, and you make sure that you've got quickly the result that you might need, right? If you want to push it a bit forward, we go with the 1084s that we have here also. We've got parametric EQ that is actually a bit more precise, especially in the low end. So, usually I would use the 1073 for vocals when it's pretty straightforward. When it gets a bit more complex with guitars, maybe pianos, I would more tend to go with the 1084 because we have a bit more depth into how we can go with the EQs on that. And when it gets to a bit more complex sounds like overheads for a drum, for example, my stereo overhead pair is the 1081. The 1081 for me is kind of a sure shot because obviously I don't really believe in the idea of it will get better in the mix. Sure, the mix can make something beautiful, but you can't polish a turd, right? When you take some sound in, it has to feel right. It has to sound right already. So I focus on how the preamps shape the sound. And then with the 1081, because we were talking about the overheads, we've got even more precision when it comes to the EQ for really fine-tuning how the overhead needs to be sounding. But then again, it can work on many different things. And I'm always amazed, because I do work with lots of engineers and producers, at how differently they use these tools, because they are tools for creation and inspiration. We've got the 1073s and the 1084s here. On that side, we also have the AMS. And I really love these modules. You know, you have reverbs, delay, and I love how they say DMX1580S computer-controlled stereo digital delay. And it just goes to show how old these pieces are and how precious they are, because they do have a digital sound, but also an analog sound at the same time. And they were the delays, they were the reverbs, they were the effects centers of the past, and especially here in Miraval, because these were part of the original studio. So my goal was to make sure that we could renovate them, refurbish them, and make them ready for future productions. And we want people to come in and touch the buttons that the legends from the past touched to get inspiration. And sure, nowadays, you go in the box, you have amazing emulations, right? You've got things that sound ample, very precise, etc., etc. What I love about these, it's the fragility. It's the emotion. It's the human side of it, because everything was soldered by hand. Everything was crafted, and you feel it. When you turn them on, when you start hearing the fan, and when you start inputting sounds through it, it's much more difficult to have a good sound straight, you know, at first. You have to work it, you have to earn it, you have to deserve the fact that your reverb or your delay is going to be perfect for the song. But once you nail it, you nail it. So I think there's definitely a long path and a long journey for modern engineers and modern producers to play with these things and see the quirky sounds and the different pieces of humanity that you can find in these machines. I'll always remember the Sound City documentary that Dave Grohl did a few years ago. And it was awesome to see an interview of Rupert. You know, Rupert Neve has always been an inspiration for me, not only on the musical side, but most importantly on the engineering side, because I love to try to push things a bit forward. And I think what Dave Grohl did in this documentary was great, because it was a way for him, I think, to make a tribute to Rupert, who created so much during his amazing years. And so when I watched this documentary, I was a younger dude and eager to get into the music business and try to make a career out of it. And I think it was definitely an important moment for me to see, what was that Neve sound? Why did they take this big board and revamped it? And so I really got inspired by this. And Dave, if you're watching, I love you. It really did inspire me a lot. So I think this is what the Neve sound is. It's inspiration. It's just an easy way for people to rely on a legendary piece of equipment that enables all sides of your potential creativity.